The Honourable Governor for East Sepik.
First of all, let me thank His Excellency, our Governor General Sir Bob Dadai, also His Honour, the Chief Justice and the judges for gracing our Parliament today. May I do that on behalf of all our members. I would like to also thank the Prime Minister and the Honourable Opposition Leader for their very appropriate responses to His Excellency. Mr. Speaker, before I add my comments, I would like to just acknowledge on behalf of the House those of our senior MPs who did not make it back, but to also commend the many new MPs who have come to the House, and we hope, and I think Papua New Guinea hopes to see a lot of these young MPs flourish over the next 5 years and develop into leaders for the future. Mr. Speaker, I was very heartened to hear His Excellency begin by talking about the erosion within our electoral processes and the democratic process in general. If there is one thing that underpins our government and our country, it is the system of government. And key to all of that is the electoral process. Mr. Speaker, it is my fear that our people have lost trust in our system of governance. We see that through the delayed counting processes. I think that is a symptom. We see that in the suspicions surrounding the elections. I have heard amongst members of Parliament who suspect that this party or that party was involved in corruption. So there is also distrust on this floor, Mr. Speaker, which is reflective of the general distrust out in our population. As leaders, we cannot afford to ignore this lack of trust. Whether it's an organization or a country, Mr. Speaker, they cannot flourish without trust. The people need to have faith in the processes that deliver our government. They need to have faith in the Parliament where their voices are represented. They need to have faith in the judiciary that dispenses justice. I fear, Mr. Speaker, over the past 47 years, there has been a continuous erosion of trust of the people for their government and for their leadership. We see that everywhere in the discontent amongst people, and particularly amongst our young people, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I want to couch all of this to sort of extract from some of the things that His Excellency said this morning. This government is sitting in a unique position, and when I say government, I mean both sides of the House, and I want to again commend the Honourable Opposition Leader, Joseph Lelang, for his comments, and I welcome them heartily. If we do not restore the trust that our people have in our systems, they will continue to lay their hands on it and to pull it apart as we continue to see. As we sit in this House, there is one seat that continues to go through this lack of trust process and subject to a total lack of trust. People do not trust the counting officials. They do not trust the police. They do not trust the defense forces. Now, if we cannot trust these mechanisms of government, who do we trust? And key amongst that are the candidates themselves, are the scrutineers themselves, who absolutely do not trust the process. We cannot ignore this, and we cannot allow this situation to continue, because it speaks to the whole fabric of our society. If there is no trust anywhere, we can't run a country. I was heartened, Mr. Speaker, as I go to my next point, about His Excellency talking about empowerment of provincial government. And I heard the same thing from the Prime Minister. It gives me hope that as our country continues to get bigger, purely from a management perspective, We must start to diversify, to divest powers away from the center. You cannot run a big organization from the center. This country is now 47 years old, perhaps 10 million people, 21 provinces with a special region. We cannot run it from Waigani anymore. And this parliament must make a concerted effort from the start to deal with that issue. Mr. Speaker, the Ombudsman Commission did not trust any of us. That's basically what happened. They shut down all provincial governments. We could not operate for almost 3 months. That needs to stop. The various arms of government need to trust one another to perform our functions. We cannot come in and because we suspect Wambla Wantok Blamil Hapside, Nogudem by making Krangi, and we shut down the whole country. This is not a tucker box, it's unacceptable. We have systems that are supposed to check other systems, not one entity shutting down the whole country. Mr. Speaker, the elections in East Sepik should have failed had it not been for the public servants in East Sepik who could not raise a single check, Mr. Speaker. I still want to know if money for the police and if money for the Electoral Commission actually arrived in my province. Because I know that the East Sepik public servants went to the business houses and begged for money to pay for fuel, to pay for allowances, to hire helicopters so we could deliver the elections. That sounds like a tucker box to me, Mr. Speaker. And it's unacceptable. No country on earth can run like this. And it comes back to the underlying issue of a complete lack of trust amongst the people and a complete lack of trust amongst all government agencies. We must fix that this term, Mr. Speaker. I implore the House. Mr. Speaker, when we were talking about the Ukraine-Russian war on this floor, I believe about 8 months ago, I was one of those that stood up and made a practical suggestion to our people, which is grow your own food in the gardens, because we know the price of fertilizer will go up. We know that COVID-19 is still affecting China, so the factories in China are shut down. Shipping is difficult. The price of rice and wheat, we knew 8 months ago that they would go up. We knew 8 months ago that the price of fuel would go up. We knew all of this. Yet, our government's response, which was commendable, but it still did not deal with the problem. We allocated money to subsidize prices. What we should have done was to look at alternative forms of fuel. If the whole world is looking at green energy, why aren't we? It is not difficult to go out and grow oil-bearing plants. We've got significant arable land around the country that is unutilized. The technology is available. We need to utilize those technologies. We need to produce fuel in country. We need to divorce ourselves from over-dependence on fossil fuels, Mr. Speaker. The blight of fossil fuel dependence around the world is affecting small countries more than all. Large countries are okay, they have diversified. Small countries have not. Mr. Speaker, as I look to Australia, they have now announced that by 2030, they will no longer have combustion engines. They will switch to all electrical vehicles. Now, Mibla by still depend on combustion engine. Now, if that is the case, we must develop the capacity to produce our own fuel because the world is changing. Also with food, Mr. Speaker. I spoke here on this floor about 8 months ago and I talked about eating our own foods, growing our own foods. It sounds like we are giving up, but it's not, Mr. Speaker. In East Sepik, when I spoke to the Sepik people, just before COVID-19, they went and planted a lot of food. In fact, in East Sepik now, there is an abundance of bananas, cacao, kumu, and fruits. at almost every village. We are encouraging our people to start to eat fresh fish, to eat the things that our land provides, healthy, wholesome foods. This is your best hedge against inflation, which is affecting the entire planet. When I read the other day, the UK is experiencing 10.1% inflation in one quarter. Now somehow we believe that in Papua New Guinea, we can spend some money and subsidize the cost because our people are screaming for us to subsidize costs. But we are never going to get away from the fact that rice, flour, and fuel are all produced in other countries. We will continue to import the inflation from the world. The only way we can significantly protect ourselves from the effect of the world is to do that production here. Inablo take rice na flour. We need to start going back to the foods that our ancestors had, when there is nothing wrong with them. Now you know how you plan him to. We need to stop being lazy, not just government, but people as well. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that I was concerned about, and I think we should talk about, and I commend the opposition leader for talking about it. We need to remove the barriers to foreign direct investment. We need to stop vilifying foreign direct investment. There is nothing wrong with foreign direct investment so long as it is done on our terms. I understand that foreign investors are afraid to come to our country. This floor needs to send a positive signal out so that the genuine investors come. Because if we don't, those investors that put money under the table, that continue to take advantage of our weak systems, emol deslagain man by come. Good pla investor, and by poret lo come because emi sabe osem. You need lo subi one something, I need lo table. Na Papua New Guinea by obim doblongen. We need to ensure that our systems are more robust and they can respond to genuine foreign direct investors when they do come. And not filter them. So all by poret negolo narbla country. We need that, Mr. Speaker. Finally, as I come to close, our people don't need handouts. What they need is equal opportunities. Whether that equal opportunity be in the area of education, whether it be in healthcare, whether it be in our justice system, whether it be in economic opportunities, they must be available. We cannot skew our systems to protect certain cultural groups, certain ethnic groups, so that all Tasolbai survive and thrive. Those opportunities must be available to all Papua New Guineans within these borders that we call our sovereign state. Anyone who has a citizenship right in this country must also have a right to equal opportunity, whatever that opportunity may be, Mr. Speaker. To our government and our ministers in particular, the work starts this week. We have seen ministers in the past become ministers of their district. It has been an all too common and popular pastime for ministers to become ministers of their district first and ministers of Papua New Guinea second. When we bestow upon you the responsibility of the people of Papua New Guinea as a minister, you act for the country, not your district. Whilst I am part of this government, you all got a minister by Kisim Tok Tok Lomi. We cannot focus on our district and provinces while nobody focuses on our role as a country. Someone must do that job. Mibla governor start lo place na walk. Mibla got confidence lo yibla lo walking walk block country. Please step up. We cannot have mediocre performances anymore. It is now 47 years. Plan is something in Bagarap. We need to put them right. We must bring our people with us by communicating better. Plenty time communication from people no good plan. People misunderstand. You go on to social media. People get numbers wrong. They get everything wrong. And they make up stories and everybody believes. We all like to believe a fancy story. True, talk, yeah, you may not believe him. And we come back and no trust. When they don't trust the government and when there's a minister standing there and speaking and giving them the facts, quick time, all the man think pinisus and no them gaman. Because we start from a basis of trust. Our lowest lying denominator is a lack of trust. We don't start from a position of trust. We need to be aware of that and we need to deal with it accordingly. People must not expect the government to do everything. You must start cutting down, passing, giving free handouts, people blow you. Me sabe also you all remember plenty time, you look at him coffee, na marit, na picnic come up, na all got something. It is not helping our people. We need to start leadership here. Our people must learn to go out and take advantage of the opportunities that are there. Now suppose you know that opportunity, it is up to them, lopaitim dua blow you me, and to force us to look for those opportunities for them. The declining safety in our communities cannot be not spoken of. And I'm glad His Excellency raised it, the opposition leader raised it, and our Prime Minister did. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, we had a massive fight in Wewak Town.
Honorable Civic, time will you talk me finish.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I may indulge you for another 30 seconds, I'm about to finish. Thank you. There's a declining safety, you must solve it. Why are our young people restless? We need to ask that question, we need to find the answers. Finally, we need to get Parliament working. And I come back to the issue I spoke of earlier about seeing many new, young, promising members of Parliament in here. We have 17 parliamentary committees that can be activated immediately. I would like to see those fully funded so that we support the Speaker and the Parliament in its work, but more so, training future leaders by putting them into these parliamentary committees so all too can start in apprenticeship blongol na kamata. It is important that the checks and balances begin from this Parliament and go out to the other arms of government, Mr. Speaker. So one time desla, me support him strong plus sing out long opposition leader. Lo you me fully fund him and let's make it work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.